Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Monster Monday. On today's episode, I'm closing out the Giant series because I'm kind of bored with it, and we're going to be looking at Volo's Guide to Monsters for some of the specialty giants that you can find in D&D. Okay, guys, so I'm going to kind of combo a bunch of this stuff for giants because Volo's Guide has some of the specialty giants, and basically it's not so much like their stat block is radically different. I mean, they can do some different things, and that's maybe what makes them cool, but it's more about like the idea of, you know, having kind of these customized giant types that are specific but could be employed with kind of higher level campaign things. And I think one of the most challenging things as a DM or GM is how to manage high level adventures and encounters and campaigns. What do you do when your party is powerful enough to like just kill most things? Well, you have to take killing out of the equation as the only solution and make it more story-oriented. And I think that's what you could do with these. Now, certainly some of these options that we're going to go over today are combat-oriented to be sure. But I think giving your players some challenges that aren't just roll and kill are a solution to the challenge of the high-level campaign. So let's begin with Cloud Giant Smiling One. And I'm not going to read all this flavor text. You could buy this book, which, by the way, I would say you should. If you're a DM and you're interested in expanding your knowledge, this is a good one to invest in. I think most people who are into 5th edition would agree with me. But the idea of the Cloud Giant Smiling One is that these are Cloud Giants who really take on the aspects of their god Memnor. So the trickery, deceitful, chicanery kind of things. Smiling ones take their name from the strange two-faced masks that they wear. The smiling half of the face often looks more like a smirk or a triumphant sneer than a pleasant grin. The frowning half represents the displeasure smiling ones feel about their place in the ordning, second to the Storm Giants. The masks serve as symbols of their devotion, but they also conceal their wearers' true facial expressions. We look at the stat block for the Cloud Giant Smiling One, and it's basically like a cloud giant, but with a few more tricks up its sleeve. Pun very much intended. And when you look at their spell casting, that kind of makes sense. The spells that they have are cast at 5th level. They have a variety of different spells that are what I would call trickerous in nature. Minor Illusion, Prestidigitation, Vicious Mockery, Cure Wounds, but meh. Disguise Self, Silent Image, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Pranking, Messing with People, see those kind of things. Invisibility, stealth, sneakery, Suggestion, Major Image, and Tongues. So I think that all of those kind of spells, are kind of more of the focused Memnor-oriented things. Their actions, they have, blah, 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 different actions, but change shape. The giant magically polymorphs into a beast or humanoid as seen, or back into its true form. Any equipment it's wearing, blah, 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 blah. So, think if you had a situation where you really wanted to integrate giants into a campaign and your characters are at a higher level, you need to create situations in your storyline that facilitate the characters becoming entangled in the plots of the ordning. Okay. Now, my hot take overall with how to make your monsters and your campaigns a little less kill, roll dice, kill, and a little more story driven is to think of them in a not D&D-ish way. So when you think of giants in the ordning, instead of thinking them in a D&D fantasy kill or be killed kind of fashion, think of them in a political intrigue sort of fashion. Think of them as factions almost. Multiple factions that are vying for control of different areas. Think of them as religious factions that are vying for control and power. think of them in all these different ways. And even if you've played other games, you can bring in kind of like philosophical approaches from those games. My example is like Vampire, the White Wolf games, Vampire, Werewolf, Mage, World of Darkness, where there's a lot of like political intrigue and a lot of like secret plots against each other kind of things going on. A lot of like people on the outside who are like, you know, they play the game, the political game, and they're nice and they smile and they bow to you, but behind your back they're plotting for how to kill you kind of things. If you think of that mentality and you bring that kind of approach with intrigue and politics into your giant mix, then people like the Cloud Giant Smiling ones, all of a sudden, they're not just a monster with a stat block. They become a powerful NPC. And I think that's almost a philosophical approach that I feel like I've shared with you throughout the Giant series, is that these aren't just monsters. I know this is Monster Monday, but really they're NPCs. They are characters who are going to be part of the plot of your campaign. You want to make sure that you have player agency, especially at high level. You should not use giants as deus ex machina. You know, they shouldn't be all-powerful, indestructible beings who just steer your party through a railroaded plot line that you created. You should have many, many different options and outcomes from those options that the players can take. But by placing these giants, these specialized kind of customized giants into your campaign, you can create factions that are having different kind of things and rivalries, and then let the players choose. Let the players choose who they're going to back. Who are they going to ally themselves with? I think that's an important kind of subtext that needs to be in your brain as we think about these things, because I know it needs to be in my brain. Because even with my decades of experience, I sometimes fall into, I don't know, it's not even lazy, but it's just like the familiar tropes, right? So push yourself, challenge yourself to try different things and put a different spin on things. And I think that's kind of why I like these specialty superpowered giants that we find here. All right, next one. Fire Giant Dreadnought. The picture in the book is dope. It is just a uber armored creature here. Armor class 21. Just beefy, full of hit points. They have dual shields. They carry 2 shields, each of which is accounted for in the giant's AC. The giant must stow or drop one of its shields to hurl rocks. But they don't need to do that because they have a fire shield attack. They basically use their shield to bash and do bludgeoning damage plus fire damage. Yikes. They could also do a shield charge. The giant moves up to 30 feet in a straight line and can move through the space of any creature. So, weapons of war. Fire Giant Dreadnoughts are massively powerful fire giants who wield 2 huge shields like plow blades. These shields bear spikes on the exterior and have hollow interiors into which the Dreadnought pours hot coals at the first sign of danger. Armed with its 2 shields, the Dreadnought can present a fiery wall to any attacker. When the Dreadnought is finished, often all that is left of a foe is a smoking smear on the floor. When not called on to fight, Dreadnoughts maintain their strength by using their shields to shove huge quantities of coal, stone, or ore about the foundry. I dig this. Now, you could just play this out as a epic war machine. When you have a major faction conflict, whoever's got the alliance and allegiance of the fire giants might have these dreadnoughts ready for war. I also think that you can make this a situation where the players, if they handle things tactically, diplomatically, could be allies with whoever is in control of the fire giant dreadnoughts. What this allows you to do then is change the tides of normal factional warfare to a point where maybe the players, if they are allied with a side that is not where the fire giants are, they could be fighting against the fire giants, or if they have allied themselves with an ally who has the allegiance of the fire giant dreadnoughts, then they have those war machines working for them. And again, we are talking big scale, high level things here, right? One of the things with high level combat encounters is that at high level, everything tends to take longer. If you've balanced it out, you're looking, at one battle maybe taking an entire session or multiple sessions. Imagine that, hours and hours just to resolve like one thing. So let's take a popular movie, Lord of the Rings, Battle of Helm's Deep. If you played out Battle of Helm's Deep in D&D, it would probably be a multi-session battle. Hundreds of, so that can be cool, but it could also get really boring after a while. So you have to figure out a way to do large-scale combat that is streamlined, And there are plenty of tips for how to do that online. Some more effective than others, but I think that you could do some large-scale combat stuff where there are some roles to be certain for kind of epic moments in the battle, but then a lot of it is more narrative. That way it drives the narrative faster, but it still can allow these things to happen. A Fire Giant Dreadnought as an individual, as an NPC, I'm not particularly inspired like I am maybe, for example, with a Cloud Giant Smiling one. Like, I could see you creating a Cloud Giant Smiling one who actually interacts with the party pretty frequently to try to manipulate them to join their faction, to join their side. A Fire Giant Dreadnought could just be, it could be an entertainment value NPC. Like a guy who just like trains all the time, right? Like they're always just working out, lifting, shoveling, whatever. They're out in the yards, or maybe the party comes across them when they're just doing their kata training moves with their shields and stuff, and they're just eagerly awaiting battle, but there hasn't been any major conflicts in hundreds of years. And I don't know, maybe you have like the rest of the Fire Giant Dreadnoughts are all kind of like fat, lazy dudes who stopped working out because there hasn't been any battles. And there's like this one guy who's still hardcore, and every day he lifts. And maybe he could just be the silent but deadly kind of type, or maybe he could be like entertainment value and kind of like a bro. Maybe like that rock dude from Thor Ragnarok, maybe he's like kind of just like even-keeled temperament, but he's hardcore. A little bit of comedic value in there. Just some thoughts there. Riff on that. Share your thoughts in the comments below. All right, next one is the Frost Giant Everlasting one. I don't know. I guess so. To hold its place or rise within the ordning, a Frost Giant must routinely face mighty foes in single combat. Some seek out magic that will aid them, but enchanted objects can be taken or lost. True greatness relies on personal prowess. Faced with this truth, a Frost Giant might seek a supernatural gift from Vaprak the Destroyer. Frost Giants mainly turn to Vaprak, a rapacious god of strength and hunger worshipped by ogres and trolls, out of desperation. Vaprak likes to tempt Frost Giants with dreams of glory followed by nightmares of bloody cannibalism. Those who don't shrink from such visions or report them to priests of Thrym receive more of the same. If a Frost Giant comes to relish these dreams and nightmares, as some do, Vaprak sets a troll upon a sacred quest to find the Frost Giant and meet it in secret. The troll offers up its own body to be devoured in Vaprak's name. Only the boldest and most determined Frost Giants can finish such a gory feast. After devouring the troll sent by Vaprak, bones and all, a Frost Giant becomes an everlasting one, gaining tremendous strength and ill temper and a troll's regenerative ability. Oh, snap. Now I get it. With these gifts, the Frost Giant can swiftly claim the title of Jarl and easily fend off rivals for decades. However, if the Frost Giant doesn't give enough honor to Vaprak or fails to heed Vaprak's visions, injuries the Frost Giant sustains heal wrong, often resulting in discolored skin, warty scars, and vestigial body parts, such as extra digits, limbs, and even heads. The touch of Vaprak can no longer be hidden then, and the Everlasting One is either killed or exiled by its clan. Oh, that's a whole bunch of story right there. Maybe the party meets this noble Jarl, this epic frost giant leader, who seems to be, undefeated in battle. And people honor him, but at the same time there are whispers about his strange sanctum that he allows no one to go into. Piques the party's curiosity. The warlock sends his familiar, or wizard sends his familiar, or the rogue sneaks in and finds that this sanctum of this frost giant has all these strange totems to Vaprak. Religion check. Vaprak is this god of blah, blah, blah. More research, more story and investigation, finds out about this ritual, finds out that your Jarl is, has been faithfully serving Vaprak, and then the party either exposes him or doesn't expose him. But let's say that somehow the Jarl fails Vaprak, and then begins to show signs of the ritual that was made, and develops monstrous mutations and all these other things. That's cool. I like that. See, there's some ideas right there. And some differences, obviously, from a regular frost giant. So if you look at the stat block, the giant has a 25% chance of having more than one head. Wow. Regeneration, the giant regains 10 hit points at the start of its turn. Vaprak's Rage recharges after a short or long rest. That's quite a rage power. It's basically like Barbarian Rage on crack. So here's another thing, too, is that maybe the party doesn't encounter a Jarl who is secretly worshiping Vaprak, but maybe they find a banished one. They find this Jarl out in the middle of nowhere, this Frost Giant Everlasting One, who used to be the Jarl of a great tribe until they failed Vaprak and began mutating, and then they were banished. Before they were killed, they fled maybe. And maybe they're angry, and there's, they seek redemption. How do they break their pact with Vaprak? They don't. Or maybe they're just angry and kill, right? Who knows? Or maybe there's a whole band of them, the banished ones. Okay, up next is the Hill Giant special. This is called the Mouth of Grolantor. Hill Giants know the kinds of foods that make them fatter, and they understand that exerting themselves too much tends to make them thinner. What the lazy brutes don't comprehend are the things that make them sick. They consume spoiled food and diseased carcasses with as much enthusiasm as children eating dessert. Fortunately for Hill Giants, they have a vulture's constitution and rarely suffer for such eating habits. This makes it all the more mysterious to them when one of their kind becomes ill and incapable of keeping food down. Vomiting Hill Giants are seen as vessels of a message from Grolantor. The clan separates the sickened giant from the others, often trapping the giant in a cage or tying the giant to a post. A priest of Grolantor or chieftain visits the famished giant daily, trying to read portents in the puddles of bile. The hill giant retched up. If the sickness soon passes, the hill giant can rejoin society. If not, the hill giant is instead starved to the point of madness so that Grolantor's hunger can be given a mouth in the world. Starved and insane. A mouth of Grolantor is so disgraced that it ceases to be an individual and becomes an object. Paradoxically, that object is revered as a holy embodiment of Grolantor's eternal acting hunger. Unlike a typical thick, sluggish, half-asleep hill giant, a mouth of Grolantor is thin as a whippet, alert like a bird, and constantly twitching around the edges. A mouth of Grolantor is kept perpetually imprisoned or shackled. All right, so I like the insane part. I like the madness part. As an NPC, maybe the party's moving through this area. They come across this chained to a post, sad hill giant, scrawny looking hill giant who's kind of insane and speaks to them and tries to convince them to free it, and it will reward them with whatever, right? That's kind of an easy thing. But if we look at the stat block, the Mouth of Grellantor has some interesting things. Mouth of Madness. The giant is immune to confusion spells and similar magic. On each of its turns, the giant uses all of its movement to move toward the nearest creature or whatever else it might perceive as food. Roll a d10 at the start of each of the giant's turns to determine its actions for that turn. The giant makes 3 attacks with its fists. The giant makes 1 attack with its fist every creature within reach. The giant makes 1 attack with its bite against 1 random target, or the giant makes 3 attacks against 1 random target within its reach. So these are just like attack actions, either biting or fisting. Fist, punching. I'm dumb. So I would say that it would be, that's fine. You could do that. It's a challenge rating 6. But I think it would be cooler to have like an insane hill giant who tries to talk to the group. And maybe they don't know that this hill giant is insane. They just think it's weird that like he's thinner than regular hill giants and seems more alert. And maybe he says strange things and repeats strange phrases that have them kind of questioning like what this is all about. And maybe if they speak giant, they can begin to decipher this. And then if they successfully have like a religion or history check related to giant lore, they might realize that this creature, this poor wretch, has been driven insane by starvation, and that they decide to put him out of its misery. Or they don't have that lore, and they're like, well, let's free him. Why has he been enslaved? And then, they try to be friends with him. And then, he runs off, like starting to eat everything in sight and constantly vomiting it up. I don't know. Not super interesting, but definitely something that you could throw into the mix. And that's not even so much at high level, too, because this guy's a challenge rating 6. So you can mix that into a mid-level campaign. Stone Giant Dreamwalker. Well, we already talked about how stone giants view the surface world as like a dreamy dreamscape that doesn't really exist, right? Like their view of what happens on the surface is like, well, it's just the dreamlands. It's not real. So the Stone Giant Dreamwalker lore is kind of about how the fact that they're loners, they're driven mad by isolation, shame, and their unending alien surroundings. The madness leaches out into the world around them. That's the cool part. And I think we did Stone Giant Dreamwalker on the early Monster Mondays when Brian and I did Rise and Roll. And I think I did that. And I think I came up with a really cool idea for how to use the Stone Giant Dreamwalker in your dreams. Yeah, so Dreamwalker's Charm. An enemy that starts his turn within 30 feet of the giant must make a DC 13 Charisma save, provided the giant isn't incapacitated. On a failed save, the creature is charmed by the giant. A creature charmed in this way can repeat the saving throw at each end of its turns. Once it succeeds, it's immune from the charm. So it's just a wandering stone giant who's insane and can also make people charmed and fall into its dreamy dream brain. Storm Giant Quintessent. To forestall the inevitable, some storm giants approaching the end of their natural lifespans seek an escape from death. They plumb the depths of their powerful connection to the elements and disperse themselves into nature, literally transforming into semi-conscious storms. Quintessent's lair. Storm Giant Quintessent has no need for castles or dungeon lairs. Its lair usually a secluded region or prominent geographic features, such as a mountain peak, blah, 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 blah. Lair actions, thunderclap, sphere of fog, strong wind, regional effects, high winds, rain, snow, flashes of lightning. Yeah. That's a pretty powerful guy. Challenge rating 16. Wind javelin, lightning sword. Legendary actions are Gust, Thunderbolt, and One with the Storm. So again, I mean, as as giants go, these are, I mean, they're basically the core giants, but they're just kind of specialized sub options. And I think you can think about them simply based on what's presented in the book and derive your own ideas about how to use them in your campaigns. I think typically these are what I would consider, at least mostly, with the exception of the Hill Giant, maybe high level, better oriented for high level campaigns. But you could use them as kind of more NPCs to help drive a narrative, even in a mid-level campaign. Or in a long-term campaign, you can kind of like foreshadow these characters through like rumors and social interactions with other, you know, NPCs throughout a campaign, and eventually get to a point where the party is kind of aware of them. And then maybe the party meets them. Or they meet emissaries of these factions. You know, they meet standard giants, and then they meet some of these various ones. So that's kind of it for this episode of covering the giant subtypes in Volo's Guide to Monsters. I don't know that any of my ideas were that inspiring. So this is just kind of like a way to kind of tie up a bunch of the options related to giants for this series, but maybe some of them gave you some ideas, and certainly if you have ideas for how to use these, or if you've used them as a DM or encountered them as a player, share your stories in the comments below. I actually read the comments to all my videos. Unlike many creators, I actually read them, and I enjoy hearing your shared stories and some of your suggestions. So hit those up, and as always, I must humbly ask you to subscribe, click on the notifications bell, and give this video a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If you genuinely didn't like this and you felt like I just didn't give you enough lore, or I didn't flex enough of my creative brain, give it a big thumbs down. And that tells me that I need to work harder to make you, my loyal subscribers, even more loyal, and to spread the word of the channel and all the things that we are doing as part of our community. So with that, I say adieu, and we'll see you on the next episode of Monster Monday. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Monster Monday. We're looking into All right, here we go. Take 7. Why can't I do an intro? What the is wrong with me? All right.
Have you ever heard of the band 900 Megabytes?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, that's because they never had a gig yet.
Oh my God, Krava. Oh my God. That is the most dad of dad jokes ever. Have you ever heard of the band 900 Megabytes? No, I haven't, Dave. Oh, that's because they haven't hit a gig yet. That's pretty good. Actually, now that I think about it, that is pretty good, Crawford. Good job.
Hello, mate. Thanks for watching all the videos. Make sure that you look up there and subscribe. And don't forget to check out some of the other videos, like them up there or those down there. We'll see you next time.